Join us in Miami for Code Remix Summit. Attend hands-on sessions with some of the best industry experts. Looking for immediate ROI by attending? Bring a relevant business case and work directly on solutions affecting your organization in the hack track. Bring your problem, bring your laptop, and walk away with work done for your boss. Register today for Code Remix Summit.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Code Remix Weekly. With you is, of course, my name is Tim Spake, and with me here is Sam Snyder.
Hello everyone.
And we'll take you through another episode of everything that is new in the past weeks of OpenRewrite and Moderne, and then dive deeper into one particular topic, this time looking at the parallel runs in the Moderne CLI. So, as folks who've come to watch your show more often will know, I'll first take you through a couple of updates, and we'll start with that right now. So one thing that is new is that we put out our monthly newsletter. So if you are reading this, you can subscribe to it on email, or you can go into LinkedIn and press on the subscribe button that you right here at the top. Then you should get a nice monthly summary of everything that is new in OpenRewrite and Moderne. So there's some predictions, of course, going into the new year. There's some links to recent podcasts that have been done. You can see videos that we've added. This one goes deeper into the recipe building. And of course, we have the full lineup now available for the Code Remix Summit. So I'll pull that forward here as well. But if you go to coderemix.ai/schedule, you can now see all of the individual sessions that will be held to. I know, Sam, you in particular are looking forward to an 8 a.m. keynote presentation. I know.
Oh boy! Well, that'll be fun. I do find, as much as I hate doing anything before 10 a.m. in the morning, that when traveling to a conference, the mixture of jet lag and nerves means that I don't have particularly restful sleep the night before most of the time. You travel for conferences so much. Do you have that issue, or do you just sleep well regardless?
I sleep well regardless, I think. It's just, I don't know.
Enviable.
You may do. And then, of course, always the curtains never close in your hotel room, and you just, you're up at 6.
There's always that crack that lets in a little bit of light. Falls right on your eyes, I tend to find.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, but the schedule is up. Breakfast 7:30, as you can see here. I'll look forward to seeing you there. Probably worthless moving through the buffet, and then see you all at 8 a.m. sharp for the keynote. And then, of course, it's a 3-day conference, so there'll be another keynote the morning after, and then very nice filled up program for you to enjoy. And of course, all throughout there's the hack track as well. So we really look forward to seeing you there. If you want to be there, then there is a promo code that I can share. You'll see it come by in the ticker below the screen. Where temporarily you can get 50% off. So be fast, and we hope to see you there.
Yeah, I think the hack track will be particularly fun. I'm looking forward to seeing what recipes or use cases people bring to us. I think it'll be a good time to just go through a bunch of different problems and help people write recipes to fix them. So that's personally what I'm looking forward to.
It is always fun to see what folks come up with, and of course we know these tools through and through, and then the things you can just build in maybe 15 minutes will just save them a lot of hours of time. So it's a lot of fun. So yeah, also in the newsletter, some videos that came out. Sam, you did a session at the Cradle DPE
That's
Summit.
the most flattering possible angle of me for that photograph, huh?
It doesn't. No, I'll be kind and say nothing at all about the photograph.
Thanks, Tim.
And then looking ahead, there's going to be some events where you can watch some of us present on OpenRewrite and Moderne. So on January 21st, if you are in Atlanta, you can actually watch Jonathan present at the Atlanta Java User Group. And the topic for the night is the state of AI in large-scale automated refactoring. So if you're nearby, then definitely check that out. It's a really fun one. And it's just a month and a half shy of Dev Nexus, of course. And we hope to be there as well. Now, if you're not there, but you are in Parkland on the same evening, you can watch a good friend of ours, Tyler van Gorder, present on demystifying Open Rewrite, unlocking code transformation. So that's another good case where you can, maybe for you, is it drivable, Seattle, Portland? Not really, right?
It is on a good day probably a 3-hour drive. That's if you can avoid the kind of peak times, avoid rush hour or rush hours as it often is. It would be, man. I wish we had. There is a train line between Seattle and Portland, which I've taken before, but it's slow, man. I miss the trains in the Netherlands and in Europe when I take that train.
Yeah, I can definitely see the differences there. So I don't. Well, yeah, for folks in the area, definitely check it out. It's really fun to see Tyler involved still with the project there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, if you're not there, but you are in Dortmund, then you can watch a colleague of ours, Merlin, present in German on code guidelines and rewrite. So that would be really fun. Yeah, do check it out. So there's a meetup, and we'll share all of these links in the notes that we share on our docs. And then I think the week after that, I'll be in Germany as well, together with Merlin, to give a workshop on modernizing your applications with Open Rewrite and Moderne. So that's really looking forward to that. I get to go to Munich and see Merlin for the first time now that we're colleagues. So it should be fun. And then hope to see you there as well. And then finally for events, if you're not there, but you are planning to join the Softwarekammer in Köln, combined with Düsseldorf, then you can watch this one online even, February 10th, where I'll be presenting how to write your own custom Open Rewrite recipes at that meetup. So pretty neat. Nice little collection. Like you can watch something on Open Rewrite about every week for the couple of months, next month, which is pretty good, I would say. Now, of course, also new. I already announced it last week that we were planning to do a release, and now we finally managed last Friday to get the release out. So this is the culmination of 3 weeks of work to now get 2 new recipe modules in there, and of course a lot of new recipes to now adopt Lombok to the fullest extent through new recipes that were contributed. But what I really like is to have this summary that we have on Blue Sky. Every time we do a release, you get a nice new graphical oversight of things that are new in this particular release, and of course a link to the rewrite recipe bomb. And here you can see that we added a new TOML parser, we added fixes for Gradle and ATL, recipes for Lombok, and we extended our support for Lombok in the various Java parsers that we have. We're very close to enabling that by default, so that should be fun to follow up on. And of course, some various fixes left and right, and new recipes for build cache in DevVelocity. So all of that released as of last week, and now available for you to consume. And then attached to that, we also did a new CLI release, which of course pulls in all those same fixes and makes it such that you can now also run recipes at scale on your local machine parallel. And that is not coincidentally the topic that we'll go into today. So I'll stop sharing here right now, and then we can transition to the topic that we actually want to discuss with you today.
Yeah, so the kind of exciting thing for today is that parallel recipe execution has been added to the Moderne CLI. Users of the CLI may already be familiar with how it can run recipes on multiple repositories in your local machine. Perhaps you yourself have already used it to do something like run, common static analysis on a set of repos you have checked out, Or if you yourself are a recipe author and creator, this is a great way to test out your recipes as you're developing them, since it's a simple matter to connect your debugger during this recipe run. And real code will always do more to show you the things that you anticipate, or show you the things that you failed to anticipate than your unit tests ever can. So in this case, I've run this common static, the popular and venerable common static analysis issues recipe on, what do we have here? 5, 6, 7 repositories, something like that. And it took about 2.5 minutes to run on these repositories, which is not bad, not huge repositories, not a huge recipe. And of course, saved a ton of time from using pre-built LSTs. If you had gone to each of these repositories and not even counting the time it would take to edit them and apply the open source open rewrite plugins to each one and invoke the recipes, just the additional time spent parsing those files into the LSTs so that the recipe run could begin would probably be, well, about a half hour. But setting all that aside, this actual recipe run took 2 minutes or so. But now we have the parallel flag. And this guy can run recipes in parallel. And to be clear, the parallelization is across multiple repositories, not within a given repository. As ever, within an individual recipe run, recipe execution is a single-threaded operation, so you don't generally need to worry about mutexes or synchronization or anything. But with an eye towards making not only transformations, but particularly code searches really fast and is approaching instantaneous, ideally, we have added this functionality to the CLI and are continuing to refine it. So right now we have the recipe run is going on my machine on these 5 remaining repositories in parallel to each other, and we shall see how much of a speed difference this makes. If we recall a few seconds ago, the serial run took 2.5 minutes or so, and this run took 1 minute. So even in this case, already cut the time down in half. And even you could definitely see even larger gains in this if I was running on dozens or even hundreds of repositories. I think the difference would be much more starkly amplified. I think we still have some work to do to maybe like cut down on the overhead of beginning a recipe run initially, so that we could maybe shave another 20 seconds off this, so that when running on only a few repositories, the latency felt really snappy. But yeah.
There's one thing we can indicate. So folks with a sharp eye, they might have noticed that the first 30 seconds were actually spent installing the remainder of the CLI, which is something that's only happening because you are running a debug build. So you're running a local snapshot version.
That's true. So I do tend to build the CLI from source. You're right. So that's a good point, Tim. I didn't even think about how that would make I should have used the version of it we just released, just put out CLI 3.29.2, which the parallel flag has been in since I want to say 3.29.0, but just put out 3.29.2 that has a couple of fixes. One I worked on for Maven, which interfered with connecting debuggers to Maven builds. So if you had a Maven LST that was failing to build for any reason and tried to connect the debugger, well, probably I was the only person who ran into that particular problem. So,
but yeah, no, that shaves off another half a minute. So then you're left with 36 seconds for what would have usually with Open Rewrite taken you half an hour.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Decent.
Yeah, and so let's see. We have, we've been pretty fairly thoughtful about how where to introduce parallelization. It doesn't necessarily make sense in every single part of the CLI. So just as kind of like a rundown of where parallelization is and isn't, and where it's on by default, and where you have to opt in. We'll just kind of go through the use cases. the kind of underlying idea of how this kind of works is kind of inspired by the Gradle daemon or other similar long-lived processes. To facilitate the parallel execution of recipes, we now start up a long-lived daemon process to kind of coordinate and run all of these things. And when you're using these parallel flags, if you don't specify a number of cores to use after the flag, it's just going to use the number of cores that are available on your machine. And if you don't want to do that, if you want to save some CPU for YouTube or what have you, or compilation perhaps if you want to keep it more work related, you could specify a lower number of cores. Or I find it particularly nice how you could, if you specify a negative number, it's interpreted as an offset from the total number of available cores. So you'd be like, yeah, I use however many cores I have minus 4 that I'm keeping for other stuff that I want to do concurrently while this recipe runs. And the progress bar, as you saw while I was running that, is updated to show you how many kind of tasks are running while it is in progress. When you're running a recipe, as you saw, I use -- recipe to specify the recipe I was interested in. For now, you have to opt in to running a recipe in parallel when you're using -- recipe. As in people who have used the Moderne CLI already to build automation of some kind or another have typically used that form of invocation. And so to minimize risk of disruption to those use cases, we have not initially brought parallelization. Rather, just parallelization is opt-in when you're using -- recipe. But if you're using -- active recipe or streaming, it's going to be parallel by default. And that is, in part to make sure that when like the IntelliJ plugin invokes it, that it is using the faster parallel mode without any further changes being required. When installing recipes, if you've ever done a mod config recipes modern sync to install recipes from Moderne DX or from a Moderne SaaS instance, you are probably familiar with how long it has taken in the past to download and install. How many recipe modules do we have in the SaaS now? It's like
50 or 52, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to say 50. That sounded like a lot, but I think that's accurate. There's like 50 recipe modules, and when it was downloading and installing the recipes from them one by one, that could take a while. And I think some other enhancements have been made to that code path alongside the parallelization. I feel like it already was taking a little bit less time than I remembered in the past, but maybe that's wishful thinking on my part. I mean, I can't. I don't know for sure. But now that is going to be parallel by default, so it should be much faster to install groups of recipes and to keep the recipes you do have installed up to date. One of the first questions I get asked when I tell people about this is, what about builds? For now, these are mod build is sequential, and I say for now, but I probably mean forever, because if you're running Gradle or Maven or even Bazel on a big repository, that's usually plenty to saturate your CPU, and you wouldn't get any performance benefits out of attempting to do multiple builds in parallel of different repositories. In fact, you would probably get performance downsides from excessive thread switching, CPU cache misses, etc. And indeed, some build tools are not designed to be run in parallel. Like Maven, if you run a bunch of Maven instances in parallel and they're all like downloaded dependencies into your Maven local, there isn't synchronization to prevent them from trying to write to the same files at the same times. So if you were to do a bunch of Maven invocations in parallel, you could corrupt your Maven local cache. So mod build in the typical case is sequential and will probably always be sequential. But if you do mod build download only, which is going to be pulling LSTs from your artifact repository, pulling in pre-built LSTs, well, there's no reason not to parallelize that. Although there's also there's maybe a little less upside to parallelizing that, because it's already pretty fast to download a pre-built artifact rather than. Well, but it's
But
fast compared to
it's
building it from scratch.
but it's a lot of fun to see now. If you have 100 projects, as I often have, you're like you have 50 recipe modules alone, but to really see all those downloads run in parallel, especially since recently upgrading to Fiverr, it's like half a minute, and then you get that nice printed summary of you've saved so many hundreds of hours just by downloading some LSTs to be able to run your recipes. Pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. It is fun, and yeah, you're absolutely right that if you're downloading a lot of LSTs, it could make a big difference. Let's see. All Git operations, or at least cloning ones, are sequential by default. And some of this isn't so much that it would be a problem necessarily, as we definitely see people anticipate that this would be a problem. People are, I've heard concerns about rate limiting or about swamping an important service with requests. So for now, repository cloning is going to be opt-in for parallelization, but that default is likely to change in the future as people get perhaps more comfortable with this idea. Now, the Dev Center is definitely one of the kind of key areas motivating this change. If anyone isn't familiar with the Dev Center already, it's this in the Moderne SaaS. It is a live dashboard maintained by running recipes in the background in order to just keep tabs on your organization's progress, whichever your major initiatives are. And the CLI has a Dev Center command, which does the same thing, but generating like a static HTML report. And because this is backed by recipe runs, often a significant number of recipe runs, there is huge potential for improvement in how long it takes to run the Dev Center by using this parallelization.
Yeah, this is one that I'm really looking forward to, because I've done on-site demos where you know that the Dev Center runs something on the order of like 20 individual recipes. And that's your thing that you say, well, let's start this one and let's go for lunch. That's how it used to be. And now we can actually run this one and it'll be done in a minute and a half. And that is really impressive. Of course, it cuts down on your lunchtime, but it is a lot of fun to see.
Or you can go to lunch earlier. If you get done with the presentation faster, then you can get right to the food, that's what everyone's really there for, right? Mod Afterburner is a command you might not be familiar with, but the idea is basically that it is doing post-processing on an LST in order to essentially create search indexes for some common information that search recipes looking to find types or method invocations or what have you will commonly use. So this is something that is intended to make search faster, and it can be run in parallel now. Git operations in general sequential, but we'll probably parallelize some of this in the future, at least where it makes sense to do so. Mod exec is an interesting one. Right now we're thinking that the future release mod exec may be parallelized by default. I think that what the right choice of default here is might depend on what people are end up using mod exec for most often, as the choice of whether or not to parallelize that really depends on what command you're having it run. When you have the CLI distribute a command over a bunch of repositories. So we've already mentioned, if you were going to have it, invoke some Maven goal or something, might be a problem to do that in parallel. But then there's lots of other tools where you'd obviously be totally fine to do it in parallel. So if I were a betting man, I wouldn't be surprised if this one had a little bit more flip-flopping, a little bit more equivocating on whether we go with parallel by default or not than some of these others where it's more under our control and maybe a bit more clear-cut what the risks and trade-offs of parallelization are. And that's kind of all the commands that have been impacted by this new parallelization feature. So yeah, give it a try. As a reminder, anyone can download the Moderne CLI and use it for free on any open source repository that we have ingested into the app.moderne.io SaaS tenant. So if you want to try out some recipe runs on some open source repositories, you can come here to the SaaS, and the version that I would say use this latest staging version. If you want to try the parallelization, I don't believe it's in the stable version yet. So download the staging version, and you can start trying out, see how much faster that the CLI can make some of your recipe runs. And if you can pick any for convenient demoing of things. You could pick any of the organizational groups that are in the SaaS, and just like clone a whole organization down to your local folder that way, and then you would be knowing that you were getting a group of repositories that you would not need, some other like a Moderne license key or anything to access. So yeah, Tim, is your IDE set up in a place where you are able to demo the IDE integration? I don't have my IDE integration working at the moment with the CLI that I had just built from source.
I'm gonna be brave and give it a try, and if my laptop crashes, then you know that I was not ready to demo.
No problem. Yeah. So if Tim suddenly disappears, it's because the sheer performance of running a recipe on so many repositories at once set his laptop on fire.
It's you never quite know. It's it'll take me like a minute to get back, I imagine, if it all comes crashing down. But this is what you've come to know. So we have a plugin. We have a for Moderne in the right hand side here, where you can on it. That's Maven. I wanted to show Moderne, where you can see that we can configure some projects here, and I of course have it set up to fork or to look across Open Rewrite and Moderne repositories to sometimes analyze things that I find in recipes. And in this case, we're looking at the Rewrite Recipe Starter project. And here I have a recipe that I think would be interesting to run on all the code that we have internally. So I'll right click on this one, and I can see that you can't see my pop-up, but there's an option here to set the active recipe.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the left, here, there's the option to run it. So that does the same thing. So I can now either pull up the CLI or press the run option here. And this will then start to run that recipe, and it will now run it in parallel by default. So if I somehow start to glitch after pressing run, then that is just my PC hard at work. So this will, you'll notice that there's the same small time delay that we saw with Sam running things on the CLI, where we first need to extract a part of the CLI onto disk, which we only do the first time that you run something, unless it is a debug build. So the first 20-30 seconds are spent installing the CLI.
So you're also on a debug build built from source? Nice.
Yes.
Makes sense.
I could have downloaded it, but we still need to work with, I think, the Foxroom SDK man to maybe get the CLI in there. As I'm one of those stubborn Linux users who's not using a Mac.
Gotcha, yeah.
So then,
I mean, I'm on Windows, so I can't give you any gruff about that.
It's good to have at least one person on something else.
Oh, I think that might be Tim's prediction about frying his laptop into oblivion and suddenly dropping from the call may have been prescient. Yep, there he goes. I guess we'll see. If Tim is able to make it back within a minute or not. Well, I don't really have anything planned to discuss during this section. If my beloved co-host disappeared. Oh, look, it looks like he's coming back. You were right, Tim. It did crash you out. You were able to come back in faster than a minute. I was going to have to try to do some like solo improv comedy or something to fill the air if you hadn't. It's really good you did, because I've never practiced or trained at that in any capacity. So it would have been miserable for our viewers. You really saved them by coming back. promptly.
Yeah, and it's the wrong camera angle to show your tap dancing skills as well.
Exactly. Well, that would be a mercy. Not showing the feet. It could be left to people's imagination what was going on down there. It's the dance performance equivalent of the wise words that it is better to be assumed a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt.
Yeah. So I can't show you the results because they're not here because the demo didn't quite live up to live streaming at the same time. But I can assure you that it's a very nice feeling to be able to get these results. Just stream it through your IDE, have the feedback on the recipe that you're working on in just literal seconds across dozens, hundreds of projects to really get that confidence that what you're doing does actually hold up.
Yeah.
So that's neat. And of course,
Absolutely.
you can pair it up with something that's also new in the past release, where you can verify that it actually still compiles after the changes that you've made. And then just another addition to making sure that
Is that built into mod run, or is that a separate command that someone would have to execute?
That's for now a separate recipe that you can run after the fact. So you can add it into the recipe run. And then
I see. So right now, that kind of like validation is opt-in. So the way you would get it would be to make a composite recipe that included the recipe you wanted to run with the validation.
Yep.
Is that in a demoable state, you think, Tim?
Not my machine. I don't dare to demo at this
All
point.
right, fair enough. You tried one demo and it almost set your laptop on fire and burnt your house down. I know it's late for you there. I don't need you to be having to run out into the night to escape a fire that we set in your apartment from using your CPU too much. So maybe for a future code remix session, we can do something focused on the validation of the correctness of recipe changes, which is, I got to say, having presented Open Rewrite to a lot of people and a lot of different organizations, and you have too, so it's a question we get constantly. It's like, oh, cool. If I run the recipe, how do I know that it's still going to work afterwards? And typically I give an example of like, well, you'll run your build. There's all the CI, all the usual quality safeguards for, pull requests and changes are still going to be there. And that's all true, but isn't entirely satisfying. So yeah, let's we'll plan a future code remix session on the subject of automating the validation of correctness of recipe changes, or at least that the changes did not break your build. So yeah, so look forward to that in a future session.
Absolutely, and I think it's one of those things that makes a ton of sense to tie into the testing framework that we already have. We've been slowly expanding the validations that we have just to get rid of some common issues that we see with recipes. And I think this is one of those that just makes a lot of sense to tag on just right there, give you feedback. And
Yeah. Both you and I have been adding validations to the test framework recently. You added one that would validate that there wouldn't be malformed AST elements, erroneous AST elements in the output of a recipe run, and that obviously focuses a little bit more on parser correctness. But recipes can use the parsers too, whether via Java template or directly instantiating the parser. So it's always possible that a recipe could introduce an erroneous element. And I added one that helps guard against mutations of the execution context. I don't think that one has been merged yet. Did you have concerns about that one, Tim? I mean, I know I hadn't updated all the downstream recipe modules to make sure they pass it. So
I had concern about the 300 failing tests that were in the same PR.
300 failing tests. I ran it and didn't, at least locally, I didn't run into any test failures. But that must be. I'll go take another look at that.
So that was my hesitation in pressing merge.
Totally, yeah. I ran that locally, and it didn't cause me any problems. So I'll go check on that.
Yeah, and then Loudons also this week added another check on that there should not be any unknown elements in your LST. So that's another different way which we can model elements that we just don't know how to handle right now. And with another validation, those are not going to be part of your LST either. So pretty good.
Very good.
Yeah. It's another good reason to write recipes for your tests. Like a lot of folks, they write recipes, and not the same amount of folks write recipe tests, which we really do recommend.
Yeah, I don't know how to write a recipe without doing tests for it. I mean, you could, you could use the CLI to go run it, but I, I just it's just so nice to have that immediate feedback of being able to, I often like to write code in the debugger. Like I hit a breakpoint right before like the line I'm actually editing, so I could see the state of the variables and everything. And anyway. So, do we have anything else that we want to discuss in this week's Code Remix, or shall we give some parting words and end it here?
I think we're good for this episode.
All right. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. We hope to see you at the Code Remix Summit in a few short months in Miami, Florida. And I believe next week we're going to have our the plan is to have Shannon Pampearl on, a prolific open source contributor to Open Rewrite, who has now been the first person outside of Moderne to contribute an entire parser for the TOML data format, which is similar to YAML or JSON, a data format that can encode information into files intended to be human readable, which notably is used by the Gradle build tool for storing version numbers so that you could be dry and not repeat yourself with version numbers all throughout a multi-project build. One of several dozen ways there are to do that in Gradle.
Yep. So it's really good because of course that parser then unlocks recipes that are able to target those files such that things will just work no matter which of the dozen plus ways you use to define your versions.
Yep.
Looking forward to that, and then
Absolutely.
hope to see you all next week.
See you there. Bye.
Thanks.